Welcome back to Politics Today. Our focus today is a continuation of setting the agenda for the new cabinet. Yesterday we set the ground, we set the ball rolling on the conversation, but today we will be a little more detailed. We will try to speak on each of the ministerial positions as much as we can cover, talk about the qualifications of each person that's now been appointed, and look at the tasks ahead of them. I'm joined now in the studio by our development consultant and author, Mr. Jide Ojo. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Good evening, Nigerians.
I know that you've had your own reactions since seeing this list.
Sure.
So before we even talk about the details, because it's quite a huge task ahead of these ministers.
Sure.
And I can tell that they are even aware, especially because the president knows that he's been elected and has told them that I will be held responsible. So I need you to fulfill my mandate. So what do you think about the position so far?
Thank you, Terry, and good evening, Nigerians. Finally, we are there, or shall I say we are almost there, because 45 out of the 48 proposed have now taken oath of office and oath of allegiance, and their time has started to count. How they want posterity to remember them, there's a blank slate before them. Let them write their names in whichever way, whether in gold or silver or in bronze. But most importantly, they are coming at a time that the country is in dire need of good governance. And it cannot be overemphasized that these are just lucky few. As I said on another media channel, APC has over 40 million registered member, if what we are told is anything to go by. We have an estimated 200 million plus population. So if you pull out 45, even by any ratio, you know these are just very lucky individuals. And some of them are returning to, ministership. Someone like Wike, someone like Enikin Lopobiri, someone like Ali Pate, quite about 4 or 5 of them are just, they've served previously in either Goodluck Jonathan administration or in the immediate past. Even Festus Keyamo, was Minister of State for Labor and Employment. So experience matter in this game. And for whatever it's worth, one good news is that all of them are experienced in one way or the other. In fact, it was, I thank God I was able to watch through the screening exercise and also listen in on the citation yesterday by a jury in Gilali who moderated that session. So it gave me, inkling about their past. Some of them are multiple times commissioners in their state. In fact, you see the Minister of Trade Investment was immediately past finance minister, finance commissioner in Imo State. The Minister of Agriculture served in various portfolio in Borno State as commissioner. Several others. Professor Ali Pate was Minister of State, like I said earlier on. And these are technocrats in their own right. Let me put this out. There are so many people who have this misconception that technocrats are only people who are brought abroad or from the private sector. No. It's a misconception. I wrote in my column in The Punch about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I put, diagonizing what does the law say about even appointment of ministers. And Section 147 sub 5 says you must satisfy condition that is similar to that of an aspirant to House of Representatives. What does that tell you? It means you must be a card-carrying member of a political party and be sponsored by that party. So all of these people are technocrats in their own right. Some are lawyers, some are architects, some are engineers, some are medical doctors, some are, they belong to different fields. I mean, there is none of them, to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't have at least first degree. There are those who have multiple first degree and multiple master's degree. So many of them are PhD holders, even though they may not be parading themselves as one. So when people talk about, oh, we need a government of technocrats, you just need to moderate your expectation that, yes, technocracy is not mutually exclusive from being a politician. Like you introduced me, I've authored 3 books. I write column for The Punch in the last 12 years, but I'm also a consultant. You understand? So one individual wearing different caps. So that is it with many of them. So they have their jobs cut out for them.
Absolutely.
And like I said, they are coming at a time when there is no honeymoon.
Let's look at those jobs now. Let's look at these positions as much as we can take one after the other. Let's begin with the Ministry of Labor and Employment. It's now been manned by former Governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, whose qualification is a master's degree in law. I did say we'll talk about their qualifications to see if it matches the positions that they've been given, and then look at the tasks ahead of them to see if it's commensurate with the kind of qualifications they have. So a man who owns a master's degree in law and a former governor, and is now in the Ministry of Labor and Employment as minister, you'd expect that he'd be experienced enough, especially from the angle of being a governor, isn't it?
Yes, that would be an expectation, but I don't know whether he has expertise in, labor relations, as in managing conflicts. But it's something that you don't have to belong to the labor unions to acquire such skill set. He has dealt in the last 8 years with labor matters, at least at the micro level in Plateau State. I believe maybe the labor unions in Plateau will be able to say more about his dexterity in managing industrial relations and labor matters. But there are 2 of them. We must not lose sight of the Minister of State, Nkiruka, who is also I think she has a PhD. She has a PhD, but also 3 times House of Reps member. So both of them are quality personalities, and they also have the bureaucracy to guide them through. They have the bureaucracy. There are also many agencies under the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Labor and Employment that they can tap expertise from. For instance, there is Institute of Labor. There is this institute in Ilorin that trains labor union, that trains people in labor matters. I've forgotten the exact name of that. It's headed by Comrade Isa Aremu. So, they can draw from such if they need, and they can also hire consultants. So it's not like you must be a subject matter expert, as it were. Because if we want subject matter experts for all of the positions, then maybe that's the nomination should, or the recruitment should have been done a bit differently, which means you already have an organogram of how many ministries you want to have and what qualifications you are looking for each of those, and possibly you now reach out to your governor, APC governors or labor, or your party leaders, and say, please, I need 2 medical doctors, I need 1 engineer, I need an architect, I need a lawyer. You understand?
And that would be a good way to go.
That will have been the best way to go about it, so that you actually don't these people, and you can find from all walks of human endeavor, you can find them even within the country.
But that would require some constitutional amendment, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, but it might be time consuming, because again, this list, for whatever it's worth, is a compensatory list. That's it. You don't eat where you do not work. So these are people who worked for the Asiwaju presidency. And that's why some of them lost elections. They have found habitation in being a minister. So it might be a bit tricky to just look for technocrats without those who really worked during the campaign.
That calls for a lot of questioning. But let's move on to the issue or the task ahead of the ministers of Labor and Employment, talking about the minister and that of state. Now,
yes.
Now, it's really disturbing considering the high level of unemployment. in the country.
Sure.
And I recall that the last administration, the ministers had concerns as to how many jobs they can create. There's no specific data as to how many jobs were created, despite what they called effort. So looking at the data where you hear that unemployment 37.7, and it's likely to get up to 41% this year. What do you expect from the ministers to make sure that perhaps we don't get to 41, or at least we drop it from 37?
Terry, you know, the truth is that unemployment, or employment as it were, is a cross-cutting issue. The Ministry of Labor and Employment does not actually do employment. It doesn't recruit. It just may create the enabling environment for, because if you want to do recruitment now, you go through the Civil Service Commission, Federal Civil Service Commission, or, you know, other recruitment, Federal Character Commission, or similar. So hardly will you say, okay, because you want to recruit, you go to Ministry of Labor and Employment. But employment issue is a germane and very critical issue at this point. Like you rightly pointed out, unfortunately, the number is rising because of even the ease of doing business, which is very tough. So you have a GlaxoSmithKline just shutting down and leaving Nigeria. Many OICs, international IOCs, international oil companies, are divesting from Nigeria to go and reinvest it because of issue of security. So this is why I say it's cross-cutting. So you may have the best of intentions. You have this job description. You have the terms of reference. You have the key performance indicator. Everything is set. But if the environment, the operating environment is inclement, you can't provide the jobs. Look at how much, I mean, in my previous research on one of the articles I wrote about 1.5 months ago, I stumbled on the fact that Nigeria, under Emefiele, spent over 1 trillion on anchor borrowers program. Over 1 trillion. Now, where are the farmers? The farmers are daily migrating from those farmlands, from those rural communities to urban centers. That's why you say Abuja is flooded with people running away from banditry in Niger State, in Kaduna State, in Nasarawa State, in Kogi State. So, unless we fix the problem of security, because security impacts on formal and informal employment. So, if the rural communities are stable, people want to engage in what is called self-employment. So, I have this ancestral land of 2 hectares. I can cultivate cassava, maize, sorghum, you know, rice on that land. But today, because of the rate of banditry taking place in those rural communities, many of them are fleeing to come and do commercial cycling in Abuja and other city centers.
So now, let's now move to the issue of security now. We now have a Minister of Defense and a Minister of State for Defense. Yes, we have had, the President also appointed service chiefs and an NSA. And then the argument of whether or not we need qualified people who are former military heads or military officers to man the position of Minister of Defense and Minister of State for Defense has arisen. So let's look at the qualifications of the Minister of Defense and the Minister of State for Defense. So Muhammad Badaru is the Minister of Defense and he has a BSc accounting. Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, is a former governor, both of them former governors. Bello Matawalle has a VTC, he graduated from VTC Bunda. I know that was a subject of controversy last year as well. And then he attended Yaba College of Technology, Lagos, and then later went to Thames Valley University, London. That's according to the information available to us. Qualification-wise, with regards to how important you say security is, what do you think?
Actually, I would have preferred somebody with military background for that position. But in the absence of none, it's still not out of place entirely to have these 2 gentlemen. My worry is just the frosty relationship that usually happens between Minister of State and the substantive minister. You know, Lanesik Festus Keyamo did a brilliant submission during the valedictory of Buhari administration on May 24th, I think, where he made a submission that it's unconstitutional to have Minister of State. And he backed it up with copious legal citations and also reasoning, legal reasoning, and even common sense. Now, what you find is that in this ministry, there are two elephants, two former governors. And how they work harmoniously together will make or mar their performance in that office. However, in terms of experience, one has governed Zamfara State for 4 years, one has governed Jigawa State for 8 years. I learned, he gave Mr. Alhaji Badaru gave an interview on BBC Hausa Service yesterday, where he said, quoted as saying that he was prepared for this because of the experience he gathered in the 8 years he was governor of Jigawa State, where he was able to ensure peace throughout his tenure. And truly, Jigawa happens to be like an oasis of peace in the midst of turbulence in northern Nigeria. You never will hear of kidnapping or terrorism in Jigawa State. As close as it is to Kano and maybe Bauchi and Kaduna. So whatever he did to ensure that peace in Jigawa in 8 years, if he could replicate that, and you heard him speak, where he was saying authoritatively that
within
the next 1 year, within the next 1 year, we will see significant improvements in security. That's one. Two, there are service chiefs, chief of defense staff, chief of army staff, chief of air staff, chief of naval staff, the national security advisors, and all the other security architecture are also there intact. So they complement. What Ministry of Defense does will be more like what I can call administrative lead, giving administrative lead in terms of budgetary allocations, you know, to each of the military. How much does the Navy get?
But that's also very important.
It's important.
Because funding has always been a problem, has always been a complaint by the security heads.
Yes, that's why I'm saying it is for them to facilitate better funding for the military. Because the role of Minister of Defense and Minister of State for Defense is to complement what the service chiefs will be doing, to provide leadership for that security architecture, the face of which are the service chiefs and other security chiefs. There is a DIA, there is a NIA, there is DSS or SSS. There are several other security and paramilitary agencies who will also be looking for leadership with Minister of Defense. So theirs is to give that leadership. And don't also forget, they will have the full complement of working with the bureaucracy, who will have some subject matter expertise amongst their directors and even the permanent secretary and the rest. So it's not much of a concern that they don't have military background. They have governed their states, and as the chief security officer of their respective states, we can see the performance. If somebody beat his chest and said, in 8 years of my being in Jigawa, there was never any serious security breach. He must have done something right, because given the fact that all the neighboring states were more like under the siege of terrorism. So for whatever he did to make Jigawa safe, maybe you can replicate that. But I warn about frosty relationship between minister and Minister of State. So there should be clear-cut delineation of duty. Where does the minister and what is the boundary for the minister, and what are the boundaries for Minister of State? What will Minister of State be dealing with? What will the substantive minister
But then how important is it to have a Minister of State? Because you talk about frosty relationship and also the illegality of a Minister of State. So for this Ministry of Defense, which is already having too many agencies and the concerns of working together, and now you talk of a frosty relationship, how important is it to have a Minister of State for Defense or otherwise?
I really, you know, I've said, maybe I won't emphasize that. I took objection to the number of ministers we have. It's bloated. I mean, there's no two way about it. Nobody can convince me we need this number. I've postulated, look, in US where we copy presidential system of government, US population is about 350 million. US has only 15 secretaries, which is equivalent of our ministers. 15 driving that country. What do we need 45 for, or 48 as it were? This is needless. Okay, so you have Minister of Defense and Minister of State. Then you have Minister of Police and Minister of State Police. For what? What do you need that for? We don't even need Minister of Police. We don't need Minister of Police Affairs. To the best of my knowledge, if we strengthen the Police Service Commission, which is a constitutional body that has its work cut out, that will have been okay for us in terms of money. Now, you look at the expenditure for police now. Bulk of it will be used to fund the administrative work that these ministers will be doing. And I don't see the value addition of having a Minister of State for Defense or Minister of State for Police, or even the need for Minister of Police Affairs in the first place, because we have Police Service Commission, we now have Police Equipment Trust Fund. So we don't actually need it. But because it's job for the boys, you need to compensate quite a number of people who help you to win an election. You possibly can overlook and say, well, let it go.
Very well then.